Hey folks, Fernando doing our video for more survivalists, and in this case we're going to be talking about what makes a bad knife. I always show you guys interesting stuff, good knives. I know knives. I've known about knives for quite some time now, and I know what makes a good knife, what makes a bad knife, and I usually do avoid them. This time though, I liked the blade geometry of this knife. I like the blade shape, the blade design in general, the knife design in general. The blade design specifically, I think it's quite beautiful, makes a lot of sense to me. At the same time, I knew there was something really not that great about this knife, especially looking at this cheap imitation wood plastic handle. Yeah, that was not gonna be very good, right? Paid about 35 bucks in a fancy expensive place. I knew that for that place it was very cheap, even though I know perfectly well I can have great knives for that same money, but I wanted this blade shape. Soon enough started failing, and we'll get to that in a second. This is not about the price of the knife. I have a Glock knife here that is tough as nails. It's very well designed, very well executed, very good materials used, makes a ton of sense, works beautifully well. I have a couple Schrade knives here, the SH CF9 and 38. This is a Griffin design, very nice design, even though there's a couple things I think could have been improved or maybe done better by Schrade. This one is also a very nice knife. These are both full Tang knives, very tough knives. These are the typical survival knife slash sharpened pry bar type of knife. Carbon steel, full Tang. Now, you don't always need a full Tang. We've heard time and again that yes, you need a full Tang knife just to make a good survival knife. This is not a full Tang knife. This is just about here, but it has very good Glock plastic all around, and that makes it super tough. Now, with this knife, I thought it was interesting. I thought it would be an interesting idea to talk about what makes a bad knife, because as I'm saying, the design is actually very sound. Yes, a little bit of an over-dimensioned guard there, but makes sense with the knife. The aesthetics that it has doesn't bother me at all. The blade shape is the reason why I bought this knife. The handle even has good real estate, allows for a comfortable grip in my hand, or even a larger one. You would still have a little bit of room there. So in a big chopper type of knife, right? Well, yeah. One of the things that a lot of people insist of is the steel. What steel is it? This is a high carbon steel knife because all survival knives must be high carbon steel. No, this is more humble 7CR17 hardened at a 56-58 Rockwell, according to what it says here. That is perfectly adequate. This idea that all knives have to be, all survival knives have to be carbon steel, not so. Stainless steel is perfectly adequate for it. The thing is, steels in general are pretty good, even the cheaper Chinese ones. Of course, if you buy the cheapest crap you can find, likely it may have problems with heat treatment. Not very common though. Usually it's other things, not the steel that ends up failing. Especially with a larger knife like this, you have a lot of material. It's not going to be easy to break this blade. Something else may end up failing. The design, as I was saying, makes a lot of sense. And when you look here, it says designed in Spain. So someone in Spain designed this knife, a very good job done, chose the steel, chose the how it would be, what hardness he wanted for it, and they had it made by someone in China. The thing is, when someone in China decided to make this thing, well, what happened to me is as soon as I started chopping with it, this started getting a little bit loose. And then it started, when I chopped through a log for the fireplace, it just failed catastrophically. You see how it broke in the handle, and when I pull it apart, I understood clearly why. This is a narrow Tang, which is nothing wrong with it. There's not a problem with a narrow Tang knife. The problem is with this little rat tail, literally speaking, type of Tang. This is just too narrow, too thin. It's not a problem. This type of construction is very valid. Many excellent knife makers make a short, narrow Tang, and then they weld a bolt like this, you know, and that makes for a very solid construction. Now it has to be bigger than this. This is super narrow, just too narrow. I can just break it with my thumb with little problem. Really, it's just really narrow, not strong enough by any means. Still, even with this design or execution flaw, depending on who screwed up, if this had been a handle surrounded with Glock plastic, they may have been able to pull it because it is a very strong polymer. Instead, they went with this cheap, crappy wood look-alike thing that is super brittle, broke, cracks all over the place, here, cracks here as well, and that is the end of this thing. Just not going to be working. There's nothing wrong with a narrow tang or even a rat tail knife. The K-bar, famous knife if there ever was one, has a narrow tang, and it goes all the way through. It has a cap there in the bottom, just placed there, and with a pin through it, and makes a great combat utility knife within its limitations. There's some people that don't understand those things, and they're going to be beating the crap out of it, posting on YouTube, oh, K-bar sucked, look, I broke my K-bar, it bent. Well, you're stupid and you don't understand nothing about knives. The K-bar was made back in the day when these things were mostly intended for soldier's knife, a combat knife, so to fight with it, perfectly adequate. For opening a few boxes, prying a little bit, sure. Now, prying like a madman or using it for batoning through a piece of wood all day long or chopping down a tree, no, that was not the idea for it. So that's where this ended up failing, especially this, the poor choice of materials. If this had been Glock plastic, yeah, probably they would have pulled it up. I just feel sorry for this knife because the blade, as I was saying, is the reason why I bought it. I'm thinking about this, about welding this piece here, and maybe with wood or some synthetic material, do a proper handle for it, maybe save this from the trash bin, right? It's about understanding what you are, what you have. I have this other knife here, the Muela Magnum 26. Beautiful knife, made by Muela, good steel. Now, if I had used this Muela Magnum in the same fashion I had used this one, I probably would have broken this knife as well. The reason why is quite simple. It's also a narrow tang that goes all the way through about here, maybe or so. But this is all stag. It's a stag handle. It's beautiful, but it's not super tough. If I'm going to be putting all my weight on this thing, I have a lot of leverage. It's a big, nice knife. Put a lot of weight in there. Push down. Hammer it with a log. And especially, I'm not going to be breaking the blade, given how large this thing is. But the stag handle, with all my weight in there, probably I'm gonna be cracking it. It's about knowing what you have, knowing that it's more of a, yes, it's a perfectly adequate knife, but within those limitations that it has because of the compromise it makes. So as to have a very beautiful natural material in the handle, you don't have the toughness that you have with some synthetic materials. In this case though, with this knife that's not using any kind of fancy stag, they could have used a good solid PVC or some other adequate material that doesn't crack like glass, and it would have been much better. And of course, a little bit of a tougher, narrow tang instead of this thing would have made a lot of sense. Guys, I just thought it would be interesting to talk about things when they fail, when they're not done properly, and some of the things to look for. And why is it that a good knife has the things that it has, and why a bad knife fails as it does as well. I'll leave the link for some of these things, especially the good one, the good knives, not the crappy one, from the Amazon affiliate program. If you want to check those out, maybe get yourself a Glock knife, which people seem to love. I definitely do. That would help the channel a lot as well. See you on our next video. Have an awesome day.